let's just get into it. My name is Stephanie, and I'm the head of the project management team at DevPost. I've been here for over 10 years, so if you've participated in a hackathon in that period of time, I was probably somehow involved. And if it wasn't me, it was one of the wonderful ladies that are on this call with me. There's also a few more that are not here. You've probably spoken to in Discord, helped you with your submissions, answered your rules questions. Hopefully you know them by name, and if not, you will today. We're going to talk about how to excel under pressure. Everybody here is a project manager, so we're pretty good about deadlines and process optimization and tools for making things easier. And yeah, we were excited to share some of them with you. We have some questions that came in advance and some topics we just thought we would cover. But first, let's intro my teammates. I think we have another slide, and then we're going to go Sarah, Kimmy, and then Danny.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I am on the project management team at DevPost, and I've been here for 4 years. If you haven't communicated with me directly, you probably have without knowing it, because I manage all of our prizes for winners. If you have ever been a winner of a hackathon, you've talked to me. I also am often one of the people on our team that's behind DevPost support. So if you've ever sent a ticket to the DevPost support team, I may very well have corresponded with you. So it's nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us.
All right, Kimmy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimmy, and I've been here at DevPost for 6 years. I'm also on the project management team, and I've also probably reviewed some of your submissions before in the last 6 years. Are we supposed to state our fun facts? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Sarah didn't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kimmy.
Okay, so my fun fact is I won tickets to a concert on a radio show to see a small band called the Backstreet Boys when I was 11.
I'll go back to my fun. I forgot that I was fun. Yeah, my fact is that, in fact, you can see a little bit of it in my picture, which I pretend is a professional picture, but it actually used to be my old headshot from when I was a professional cellist, which was my career before I joined DevPost. I used to play professionally, and I still do a little bit, but used to travel all over the place. Have been to the Sydney Opera House, played in the pit for Hamilton on Broadway in Chicago. Yeah, so that was me before I joined DevPost. Now my life is way more exciting here.
It's hard to top those 2 fun facts, but I'll see what I can do. My name is Danny. I'm also a senior project manager here at DevPost. I've worked at DevPost for about 3.5 years. Had no prior hackathon experience, but what I love most about this job is collaborating with people all over the world, reviewing really unique and innovative ideas from the submissions, and just getting to touch on a ton of different industries. My fun fact, so prior to this job, I actually worked in sports and entertainment. And when I was working for a hockey team, a professional hockey team, we were 2 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup. So I was 2 wins away from getting a Stanley Cup championship ring. So close, but no cigar.
We can make you one here. We'll make you a DevPost championship ring for you.
Great.
I didn't actually give a fun fact either. I didn't plan one, but the one that I usually give out, I guess it's not fun for the people on this call, but everybody else, I am an amateur boxer, and I've had like 4 amateur boxing fights, which is always a surprise to people. It's not really my personality. But yeah, I'm competitive, as are all the women on this call, and we run hackathons, so we're into the competition side. Cool. Okay, we have some questions, and we can get into those, and we'll follow the same order: Sarah, Kimmy, Danny. But if you have anything else you want to jump in and add, feel free. informal. So project management kind of questions. What are some time management strategies that you recommend for teams to stay on track and avoid like last minute issues, submissions and hackathons?
Yeah, I'll start. I wanted to point out, first of all, for you guys to check out, we have actually a very helpful help article that has some super helpful, has a timeline on there for you to check out, but you can look up tips for planning your project. I don't know if maybe someone on the call wants to drop a link to that, but it has like literally step by step, as if you're on a 2-month timeline, how much time to spend in the ideation phase, when to move on to like selecting teammates, all that kind of stuff. It's super helpful, and you can shorten it or lengthen it as needed, but I find that very helpful. I also wanted to just point out that I think a lot of people think of the submission process mostly as like coding and creating the project, but not to forget the submission itself, which is so important, because as great as your project is, as great as your app is, if you don't present it well, then no one will know how great it is. So make sure you spend lots of time on the submission itself and familiarize yourself with what that submission is. You can take a look at it before you're even ready to hit a submit button, long before. So to take a look at the submission long before, while you're still just thinking of ideas, it can help get the creative juices flowing. So yeah, make sure that you dedicate significant time to the submission itself.
Also have somebody proofread it who is not on your team. If they understand it without the context that you have, like coding and working really hard by yourself or with a team remotely, you know, you can kind of lose the thread there, and you may see things that are obvious to you because you've been working on it, but not obvious to a person who is just seeing it for the first time, along with potentially hundreds of others. Yeah, cool. Kimmy.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to set milestones. So as soon as the hackathon is published, there are already dates there for you. And just breaking, just breaking your ideas or your projects into smaller, manageable tasks with like specific deadlines, and a deadline way in advance of the submission deadline is important. I think this just helps track your progress and just ensure that all tasks that you set for yourself are covered. And I think it's also important to prioritize tasks based on feasibility, and just breaking it down by that as well. And for us on the project management team, we use time blocks a lot in our calendar. So if there's like a specific task that you want to focus on for the week, I would immediately block that time on your calendar if you have a team with your team members already. And then lastly, I think if you have a team, just doing like daily check-ins with them, whether that's like on Slack or Discord, or whatever form of communication that you're using, just to assess everyone's progress, and reallocate tasks if necessary. But those are like my best time management strategies.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit, because Sarah and Kimmy covered a lot of it, but I would recommend, if possible, always try and submit early. That way you can see if there's perhaps more steps that you didn't realize, or let's say there's a problem with your demo video, then you're not scrambling at the last minute. And one of the nice things about actually submitting a project on DevPost is, even if you've submitted it, you can continue editing up until the submission deadline. So for DevPost managed hackathons, we actually provide a little bit of submission review, meaning if you sent something in early and perhaps you're forgetting something, or maybe you didn't answer one of the required questions, we will follow up with you to let you know perhaps what's missing from your project or what's preventing you from being eligible. So in managing your time, leaving yourself ample time to submit early so that if last minute changes need to occur, you're not scrambling. So that just kind of goes hand in hand with kind of creating that timeline and assigning everyone tasks. And one thing to point out is, because I saw a question come through, but when picking your teammates or building out your team, there's a lot of value in finding people that have different skills than you do. So let's say perhaps you're not as comfortable with creating a demo video and you're much more technical. If you find different skills or different teammates that can provide different areas of strengths, I think that can also help expedite the process too, because then everyone has a really clear lane of what they're responsible for. And that way, no one's really stepping on toes. You don't have to worry about who's responsible for what. Each person is, given a clear and direct path of how to complete their aspects of the submission.
That's a really good point. And it's something we also recommend. We have an internal private hackathon platform called DevPost for Teams. You might have seen it on the linked on devpost.com. And one of the things we try to do with customers there is get, more people within an organization participating together, and engineers like you guys are often, what people think of as hackathon participants, but it's a really good way to get business people or marketing team members involved as well. So even just friends of yours who maybe aren't in the coding world, they might be really good at doing the demo, and that's maybe one piece off your plate, and that is a huge value added to the project. So definitely something to consider. I was also thinking while you guys were talking that technology, given where we are and what we're talking about, two things. Our team uses ClickUp internally. We all live in ClickUp. It's free if you want to use it for free. But if that's a little too much for you, stick your project idea into ChatGPT and ask it to break down your project into some steps. There's a lot of ways to get started with that maybe you hadn't, if you're not a project manager, you're probably not thinking about those sides of the tech world, but we do. Okay, next question. How can teams maintain clear communication and collaboration throughout the hackathon, especially under pressure?
So, first of all, just I'm sort of considering a global hackathon just because that's what we tend to work with most. But like time zones are a consideration, work schedules are a consideration, and kind of making sure that the members of your team are on the same page of when you want to be working and whether you're going to be working synchronously or not, is to just make sure everybody's on the same page with that. Also, I definitely encourage everybody to utilize the DevPost Discord because it's a place not only for you to find team members, but there's just some great discussion happening there all the time, whether it's in a specific hackathon channel or just in the general chat. That it's a great place to meet people, get ideas, and just be part of that community. So as well, to always be checking whatever support channels are available for the particular hackathon, because you're sure to find just everything you need to know. So.
Yeah, and alongside, if you don't have a team yet, definitely use the DevPost Discord to look for team members. But also on a hackathon site, you can go to the participants tab and then search for team members there based on like their skills. And I think once you find your team members, just establishing just clear roles based on like strengths and skill set is important, like right from the beginning. And then using like collaboration tools with that team, whether it's Slack, Microsoft Teams, Discord, or any other like real-time chat tools to use. And with that, just keeping each other informed of what you're doing, just like regular updates, and also fostering just feedback, because if it is a global hackathon, you might be working with people that you've never met before, and just trying to be respectful, like Sarah said, of like time, their skills, but also wanting feedback from them, and just by like encouraging it and asking for it, I think is really important. to get that constructive feedback going.
Yeah, I think, again, you guys both hit on it, but just to add a little bit, respect is obviously a big thing, especially if you haven't worked with these people before, or perhaps it's your first hackathon. And also just having fun with it. Understanding that although there might be some really enticing and incentivizing prizes on the line, people want to, boost their skills. They want to work and collaborate with more people. They're looking for an opportunity to explore new tech. So whether you know it or not, there's going to be different skill levels, experience levels, and just different things that each participant can bring to the table. So just keeping an open mind, and with an open mind, obviously comes open dialogue, patience, and yeah, just continuing to check in with each other to make sure that you're all holding each other accountable. And if you have questions, whether they're group questions or specific to your team, utilize the discussion forum or the Discord or Slack channels or whatever else to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. So if your teammates are waiting on you for something, you can at least show that you're putting in the effort to get your questions answered.
That actually ties into the next question pretty well, so I'll let Danny talk first so you don't get your answers taken by how can teams make the most of the resources provided during the hackathon?
Yeah, I mean, I think off the bat, we send a couple reminders for DevPost managed hackathons to utilize the updates tab to let people know if there are new resources available, or just plainly to check out the resources tab. The way that we approach it is that we want this section to really be where people can dive in and get all of the information they need to get started. So even if you have experience with the tools or the product that the hackathon is focused on, my biggest thing that I would say after checking the rules is really reviewing the resources, taking a deep dive in there, seeing all of the different, whether it's videos or links or sample code, all of those are in there to really help and inspire you. So just reviewing them, and if you have questions about them, again, posting on the discussion forum or messaging the organizer directly, but they're really there to help you get started, have a deeper dive into some of the tools, technology, and resources. And yeah, they're meant to be a help guide to everyone. So really can't emphasize this enough that if you're planning a hackathon, make sure that the resources do just that. And if you're a participant, make sure you check it out, because it is going to give you a little bit of a head start on understanding the tools and technology.
Definitely. Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of piggybacking off of that, I think I once talked to a hackathon manager who really made it clear that the resources they laid out on that resources page, like they're all there for a reason, and they are wanting for their participants to go through everything and use everything that they offer. And it's clear, I think, to organizers when people maybe have a project that is very cool but doesn't necessarily fit the hackathon theme entirely, because they're not making the best use of those resources. And it's obvious, I think, in a submission when someone has really put the thought and really gone through what is offered to them, to help guide them, to help inspire them, that those resources are really a key to what the judges are ultimately looking for.
Yeah, Kimmy.
So I think many hackathons on that we have on DevPost just have online forums or chats too. So on top of like the discussion tab, I would encourage also looking for like a forum that's linked in the resources, that's specific to that tool or the technologies that are being used. And most of the time, there are available like office hours or even like mentorship opportunities for our hackathons. So I would definitely mark that on your calendar if that's already available on like resources, because it's the best place to answer or ask questions and get real-time answers from the hackathon managers, as well as like the SMEs that are part of the hackathon. And once you register for a hackathon, there are to-dos. And usually I see these to-dos as the resources that are highlighted the most, like basically the resources that hackathon managers want you to click on and get familiar with right from the beginning. So I wouldn't miss that right when you register, and see where it links off to.
Good idea. Yeah, I was thinking also, a lot of times as project managers, we try to encourage hackathon customers, people running, sponsors running the hackathons, to include, problem statements or like inspirational apps that they've seen in maybe their marketplace, or something that they think is really cool and really interesting. And I think that is something that people overlook a lot. Like, we don't, you don't need to build the exact thing that the problem statement said, or the exact thing that you saw in the App Store, because that's not as creative, right? But you can kind of get a sense for like more what that sponsor is looking for, at least, for features and just for your own brainstorming. I think it's really helpful, and we try to encourage that a lot. Okay. Next question. What are your tips for creating a realistic and achievable project scope within the constraints of a hackathon? That is a very difficult question. Kimmy, go.
Question. I think for me, if I were just seeing review or having reviewed so many submissions, as well as if participated in hackathons before, I think for me, it would just be to be like pragmatic or practical about the resources available, the time that I have, the team, like my team's like skill set, and then really just honing into that and figuring out what we can achieve before the submission deadline and what we can constantly iterate. I would start simple first and continue to iterate on that over time. Because I think sometimes when you start too big, it's a lot of pressure and you can get stressed out. But if you have like a 6-week submission period, just defining milestones and clear goals, trying something out simple first, familiarizing yourself with resources over time, and then just iterating on that idea to create like that prototype or that first like viable or MVP, is pretty much my advice.
Good advice. Sarah, or Danny, did you unmute?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think for me, the first few days as you're building out your team, or even if you're working solo, whatever it may be, come up with as many different ideas as possible, almost doing like a data dump to figure out what's most exciting to you, what you think is perhaps, let's say like more of a reach versus maybe something that's a little bit more attainable, and then start working backwards from there. So if you can come up with the big idea first, whether it's something that you like are brand new to, or just have like a general idea about, I think just starting to put pen to paper or really type it out, you really can't go wrong there, because it's going to let you get a little bit creative before you need to start refining and going. Personally, I sometimes get a little bit intimidated or overwhelmed if I can't do like a big data dump to figure out like what is the clear path forward. If I just jump in and start, there are going to be things along the way that I will have said, oh, I wish I had given this more thought, or I should have explored that. So I can completely understand if you're really excited to start building and really get into your project. However, if you don't allow yourself time in the beginning to kind of explore some other avenues, potentially reach out to teammates and see their ideas, I think it can be more challenging down the line. So don't be afraid to take a little bit extra time at the beginning. As Kimmy mentioned, most of the time for our public hackathons on DevPost, we see, a 6 to 8 week build period. Obviously, if it's in person or it's a shorter workaround, I'd say cut that time down significantly. But that's really the first place that I would recommend starting, is trying to get down as many different ideas as possible, and then working backwards to refine what's going to make the most sense. What do you feel comfortable building? Do you have the skill set to do so? And then from there, what questions arise? What's going to prevent you from taking that next step to get started?
Good advice.
I love that. And I love the idea of the data dump. And now there are so many tools out there that can help with that. Some of our hackathons have an AI idea generator on there. If they don't, I mean, you can easily create one yourself just in ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you use. But AI is so helpful now just for ideation and for helping you come up with something that really, like, just enough ideas that something in there is going to really spark your excitement and your interest. And then I would say, once you have that bulk of ideas and you're honing in on what the best fit is, think about the problem that you're truly trying to solve, and find that primary goal that you want your project to accomplish. And then place that goal right next to all of the judging criteria. See how it matches, and see how you can fit it to what exactly this hackathon is looking for, rather than just taking something that you are interested in and want to do and kind of like forcing it into to those criteria. Just take some of those ideas that you find in your data dump and see what matches the best.
Is spectacular advice. I was thinking also while you were all talking that something else we see a lot is very similar projects submitted to the same hack, like, which is understandable. You come up with an idea, and the way they're talking is like, maybe this is a useful solution, but if there's 50 of the same kind of idea or general project submitted, it makes it a lot less obvious to a judge that that is better than the other one or something like that. So to Sarah's point, see if there's something that can make yours different, or search app stores and see what is out there already and like what features they're using. And then maybe instead of building those features that are already existing, work on your spin to it, something that makes it a little bit more creative, because the idea doesn't have to be brand new. Creative ideas are important, but there's also a lot of great software that's already been built. So, those are some ways you can kind of take a good idea or something that interests you and kind of make it a little bit more specific to a hackathon and give yourself some direction to take. Our next question we kind of covered, but I'll just see if you guys have any additions really quickly before we go to the audience questions. What are some good tools to project manage a hackathon submission? I mentioned ClickUp before because we're just in ClickUp all the time, but there's a million.
Yeah, I think of a ton. Oh, Sarah, go ahead. I don't know if you're good.
Sure. I mean, I guess I would say some of the common ones that we tend to see from a lot of participants are like Figma, Notion, Jira, GitHub. There's so many out there, and it's kind of your personal preference somewhat. I also wanted to just throw out there another, actually a blog post on our site that has some tips for using AI to elevate your project. So that can also be really helpful. And just that post, I think, is an inspiring one for just kind of getting you thinking about what you can do with AI. So moderator, if you want to throw that link in there too.
There'll be new things every day with that.
And I'm a visual learner, so I actually really liked a tool that one of our product managers used, Miro, to visualize pretty much how we would collaborate as a team. I was a really big fan of that. And a lot of these communication tools like Slack already have built-in things. So like Slack reminders, I use that all the time. When I don't have if I have only 2 seconds I'll usually just quickly ask Slack to remind me in an hour or 4 hours or the next day. So yeah, I think also just using tools that you normally use and figure out the best way to utilize them to see if they do provide things like that, like reminders and to-dos already built in.
Yeah,
Integration.
that was actually my biggest piece of advice, is not to necessarily reinvent the wheel here, but utilize tools that you're already comfortable with or that you're already using and make them work for you. In the event, you know, that it's not working, I recommend also, if you're working in a team, asking people what tools they use. It's always an opportunity to learn something new. And, you know, to the extent that at least one person on the team has experience with it, I think that can also help. But yeah, utilizing tools that you already have access to, that you're already comfortable with, and making sure that others in your group or your team have access or at least visibility into some of these tools.
Yeah, totally. Adding in a new tool that nobody uses is just more work than its benefit. I was thinking like integrations. So all the things you guys were mentioning, we use all the integrations into all of the tools. So for Slack, we have like a stand-up bot for our project management team where, you know, you can ask for help or give a status update. And that's automatic a couple times a week. So you guys could try something like that. We have a ClickUp integration, so we can send tasks back and forth as they come in, you know, things like that. Reminders, obviously, remind me in 20 minutes is like my favorite Slack thing of all time. Yeah, kind of endless. Okay. We have some questions from the audience that came in ahead of time. And then if we get through some of these and there may be some more, we can take some current questions. But first, what common mistakes do you see teams make during the registration and prep phase that hinder their chances of winning? It's a hard question too. Danny, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I think sort of goes back to my earlier point of maybe if you don't do the time at the beginning to sort of vet all of the ideas, you end up taking on something that's perhaps a little bit too ambitious, or you underestimate how much time it's going to take. I think that's a really big one. Oftentimes, as we get closer to the deadline, I think people start to get a little bit nervous that they won't have time to do so. So just trying to get, like I said, like as much information as possible about like different avenues or different things that you might want to pursue, and then immediately diving into understanding more about the tool and the technology.
Yeah.
If you have any questions that arise, obviously you can go to the hackathon manager, pose the questions to your team, but the sooner you can start getting to some of those questions that you're having and getting them answered, I think the better in the long run, because it gives you more time to actually work on your project, implement some of the things that you perhaps were unclear about from the beginning. But if you save everything until the very last minute, there's a chance that perhaps your questions don't get answered, or if they're answered, it doesn't give you sufficient time to incorporate that into your project. So just trying to be as like prepared as possible at the beginning, so you're giving yourself as much time in the middle and towards the end of the hackathon to really just focus on refining the project and getting everything cleaned up.
Yes, very good point. And you'll also give your hackathon manager a small heart attack if you wait until the last second.
Exactly.
We're okay with it. Kimmy?
I think what I see the most is just kind of not reading the rules thoroughly, whether that is like eligibility, and if the tool is not available in your country of residence, and then just building a huge thing and then finding out at the end that you're not eligible kind of blows. And not reading just the requirements, and the judging criteria. I think that's like the main things. And I will say that, like Danny said in the beginning, you can create a submission and iterate on it up until like the submission deadline. So my biggest piece of advice is, once the submission period opens, is to create a draft, because oftentimes there are additional questions in there that are required of you to submit an eligible submission. And that could take a decent amount of time. So knowing what those questions are in the beginning and building time to answer those questions, and getting feedback from your teammates is really important. So yeah, right when the submission period opens, create a draft, get familiar with what questions are being asked of you, familiarize yourself with the requirements, and just making sure that your project is aligned with the requirements and judging criteria is really important.
Yeah, you guys basically hit on most of what I was thinking. Really reading the rules. Also, really taking advantage of the resources available. And I mentioned this earlier, but just managing your time so that you're not only working on your project up to the very deadline, but you're leaving an adequate amount of time for presentation, for the submission itself, for your demo video, because yeah, like I said before, if your project and your app are amazing, you have to be able to show it.
Totally true. Okay, here's a good one. How can participants choose the right hackathon challenge for their team? Yes, Sarah, we'll start back with you. Oh,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think probably always the thing that is it's always obvious to us when we review submissions when somebody is really, really excited about what they've been working on. Like it's very clear in their text description, in their video. So pick a hackathon that really speaks to you, whether it's the topic or the theme or the tool itself, something that makes you excited, something that you have always wanted to learn more about or spend time on. And then also just like take some time to think about what your priorities are when you're looking at hackathons. Like, is it the biggest prizes? Is it a hackathon with a social good theme? Is it are you just more concerned with like your chances of winning and you look at the number of participants? Like think about where your priorities lie, because they'll be a little bit different for everybody. So
good answer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I would just consider what your passions are, and then submitting that passion project that you've always wanted to submit. Because when you're passionate about something, you're super motivated to do it. So I think just choosing a topic also that you've always wanted to learn, but just haven't had the motivation to. And once you see it, look at the resources, take some time to learn it, because in a hackathon, I think it's the best place or the most centralized place to see what you can learn. There's a bunch of resources available that are that have really good documentation that is set out for you already. So it's like your passion project is kind of aligned. And I also would consider just realistically also your strengths. It's a hackathon, right? It's a competition. So if you're in it to win it as well, also consider what the hackathon is requiring in terms of skill set. So if you're skilled in that specific tool, I wouldn't hesitate to register and learn more about it and see if it's feasible for you to actually submit a project. So yeah, passion as well as honing into your skill set and your strengths.
And I think for me, it's almost taking even a step back. So we have a ton of hackathons on DevPost, which is awesome. But going onto the site and actually browsing and looking at a few different ones, whether it's a theme that you're interested in, if there's a specific tool or technology you're interested in, oftentimes we have many, many hackathons running at the same time, and some of them may be quite similar and some are obviously going to be vastly different. So take a look and see what we have going on and where in the submission period that hackathon is. Are you going to have ample time to create a project and build for it? And I'd also say in a similar vein is checking out the DevPost newsletter. We have tons and tons of great hackathons that we like to spotlight and show attention to. So if you're not really sure where to start and perhaps just getting on the site and looking at all of them is a little bit overwhelming, browse the newsletter, see what's going on. We do like a little summary about what you can expect to build or expect to learn. And if any of that is appealing to you, register. There's nothing that says that you absolutely have to submit. Obviously, we'd love to see submissions from everyone, but if you just want to get experience learning a new tool and perhaps you're not as comfortable, go ahead and register, play with the tool, see what happens. And then that might make you even more inspired for the next hackathon that they run. So just browsing and getting as many different options for yourself as possible until you find the one that really aligns most with your passion.
And
Really
one
good.
other thing that I wanted to add, just that reminded me, Danny, is that our team actually hand selects hackathons that we want featured on the homepage. So if you go to our homepage and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the featured hackathons, and those are the ones that we pick that we think look cool. So if you're just like looking for staff picks, it's a great place to look.
I was going to say something similar, which is if you want to narrow it down to just one where one of the people on this call or some of our other project managers will be more heavily involved, you can search in the hackathons page for the Managed by Dev Post filter, which is new and we love it. It's very cool. And that will limit your list to that. And I would also add back to the beginning of this, the questions you're asking, check the timeline. Does the deadline line up with, that's when you're graduating college, or like, is that when you have a huge deadline at work and you can't participate? Like those kinds of things, because the theme could be interesting and you may need to adjust your timeline or, submit something faster or wait for, find a different one to participate in. So yeah, cool. All right. How can teams balance the need for creative brainstorming with the pressure of a ticking clock? I know Danny kind of touched on this before with like the brain, kind of like the data dump. I don't know if you have anything else in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously the data dump is where I would start, but that's definitely meant to be more of like an introduction to get to know other people, to get some of your ideas down. But I would not harp on that or spend too much time there. If you spend too much time in the ideation phase, you're not giving yourself enough time to build. So even if you have the most original and cool concept, if you don't have time to build, the hackathon organizers and judges aren't really going to have time to see it. So with that in mind, I think it's more so just sticking to a timeline that everyone feels comfortable with and trying to establish that timeline as early in the process as possible.
Yeah, and I think with the data dump, since it's also, I love that idea. But I think once you have that data dump and brainstorming ideas is kind of complete, just prioritizing the ideas based on like your skills or feasibility or impact and how well it meets the requirements and the categories and criteria. And then just make a decision and just start implementing on that decision and just kind of avoid going back and forth and overthinking the decision that you've made. And yeah, and see where it goes.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, and I would say also kind of know yourself and your strengths and where you have the easiest time and the hardest time. We've surveyed submitters, and some people spend the most time coming up with an idea, and a lot of the other stuff is easy to them. Other people have no problem thinking of ideas, but it's the implementation or the submission itself. Like just kind of know your own, come up with your own timeline that makes sense, that caters to your own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I'm going to add to Kimmy's make a decision, to cut off a time, make decisions. Like that is one of the things that can slow down progress so much. But you could also, if you do this data dump tomorrow, even without a specific hackathon in mind, you might have a bunch of ideas and then you might see a hackathon in like 6 months. You're like, wait, I had an idea, back then. You don't have, just because you don't build it for this hackathon doesn't mean it's never going to be something you can use in the future. So save all your notes. It's really valuable later when you are hitting like a roadblock or something. Okay. this one, I expect to hear some good answers from you guys because I know you've reviewed a lot of projects. What are the key elements of a winning hackathon submission from your perspective as a project manager? Sarah? Oh, just go
I
back in order.
think I think one of the biggest things is that it's well balanced, that not only does it have solid code and technically is really outstanding, but it's also you have really demoed it in an effective way in your video. You have explained it in an effective way in your text description. It's well-rounded in that way so that the app or the project itself is just as excellent as the presentation.
Kimmy?
I think just articulating the problem that you're trying to solve, like, and why it matters, and how it connects to the hackathon itself, how it connects to the categories, if there are any, is really important. We do read descriptions, and when we review submissions, we read and we watch, so we do pay attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it. So yeah, I think just initially having that like clear problem statement just from the beginning pretty much informs what you're going to do throughout the whole submission. So that's really important for me, is if I know that there's a problem to be solved by the submitter. And to piggyback on Sarah with demoing, I think if there is a demo video required, having like a working demo is important to us as well. Seeing if what you built is functioning, and not necessarily just like a screenshot of something, but it actually working is also showcases like a great submission.
And not that it has to be flashy. It doesn't have to be a super fancy video, but we need to see that it actually works as you described. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple things for me, and perhaps honestly one of the most obvious and maybe most overlooked. Please, please, please mention the tool that you are using or the product that the hackathon is focused on. I can't tell you how many times I've reviewed what looks like an incredible demo video, but there's no mention of the tools or the product that the hackathon is focused on. So for me
Yeah.
as a reviewer, it makes my job a lot more difficult to actually assess whether or not it is eligible. Because if there's no mention of the tool or the technology working, it just leads to a lot more questions. So even if it seems very obvious to you that the tool is integrated, make sure in your text description that you also have something that speaks to how you utilize the tool and basically the problem statement that you're looking to solve. I think that's like perhaps one of the most obvious. And then I think each hackathon obviously has a different set of judging criteria. And while we're not necessarily judging the projects, I do like to keep those in the back of my mind to think about what's going to be most important to the judges for this. So as Sarah mentioned, maybe it's not a flashy video, but for hackathon I worked with, Google Flutter, they were really looking for people to create more like educational materials to help onboard a new set of developers. So that was something that, if you had off the bat, it made your project stand out to me that much more. So I would just take the time to review the judging criteria to figure out what judges are going to be most focused on and make sure that you're addressing them. So not everything is necessarily going to have the same criteria. There's going to be different emphasis or stress on different aspects of your submission. So really cater it to the hackathon specifically. Don't worry about perhaps what you've done for another hackathon. Just take the time to read the rules, review the judging criteria, and make sure that your project hits on all of the criteria there.
Yeah, that's really good. I was also thinking as you're talking, all of you were talking, the prompts that we have in our submission description, while you don't have to follow them exactly, they're there for a reason. It's like, what's the problem you're facing? How did you solve the problem? What issues did you run into? Things that maybe a sponsor or judge will find interesting as they're reading it, and to help kind of tell the story. And then the last one, which is potential, we have a criteria a lot that's like potential impact or future. And obviously hackathon projects aren't always going to be, marketplace ready at the end of a submission period. So you may have built out your use case for something really specific, but if you can talk about how, you could change out the content in this app for a different data set, and then it's useful to a bunch of other people, or maybe there's like a business use case, it's something that shows that there's some more value to it beyond just the hackathon submission, can sometimes also advance your project further in like the potential impact types of categories. And that you can get creative with. It doesn't have to be super obvious. It's just kind of, we're saying like getting your point across to people who may not know all of your inner thoughts about how you came up with this idea and why it's so great. So making sure you can kind of communicate that to people. Cool. Well, we talked almost our whole hour, which, not surprising. We talk all day and could talk forever. Do you guys have any last words of encouragement or, anything you want to say? Sarah?
I want everyone out there to know like how much we actually love and value your submission. Like you guys don't even know, we're back here all day. Like literally this morning we were like sharing submission demo videos with each other, the ones that we think are super cool. So like if you ever feel like you're just like in your lonely office doing this for nobody, we love it. And I mean that's the reason we're here is we think that what you do is super cool and very inspiring. And we're just like honored to be part of the process.
That was great.
And I will say some of the submissions I've seen in the last like 6 years or so have been mind-blowing. Like it's just things that I've never would have thought anyone could create. I've seen that too. So I really enjoy reviewing submissions as well as like being part of hackathons with just new tools that are pretty neat to build with, and seeing what people can do with it is always really impressive. So I enjoy that part a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Sarah and Kimmy both just said. I think it takes a lot of time and dedication to participate in a hackathon, whether it's one day or 8 weeks or however many days it may be. So we're just super grateful that you all are interested in participating in some of these really creative ways to come up with examples of problem solving. I think for me, that's really what a hackathon boils down to, is creative solutions for unique problem sets. So continue to stay inspired. And if there's ever any time that you have a question that's not listed in the resources, or, perhaps the hackathon manager doesn't have the answers for, we're here to support. We want to make sure that you all feel empowered to continue creating really impactful projects, really fun projects. So if there's ever a point in time where you're feeling stuck, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're not going to help you with your project per se, but we will point you in the right direction of, maybe getting your technical questions answered, or as Sarah mentioned, some help articles that we have. We all want to see you succeed. So that's, I think, the biggest takeaway is, even if you're feeling like it might be a bit of a stretch or far-fetched, we want to support you all in the initiatives that you're taking to submit projects.
That's lovely. I agree with all of you. Reviewing projects and seeing what people in the community build, even just the side conversations we see happen in Discord, we're joking together or teaching each other things, or just for fun. It's the community is obviously the best part about hackathons. And so even if you don't submit to something or you don't win it, there's a lot more to be gained than just prize money. Although there are lots of hackathons and DevPost where you can try and win some prize money. So, make sure you go check us out and register for something and join our Discord. And we look forward to talking to you again. We will post the video of this recording and some of the content that they shared while we were talking. And yeah, if you have other questions, you know where to reach us. And thanks for joining us. Bye.